Hello, and welcome to another review video. This time around, I'll be taking a quick look at the Idolm aster units. These new 8 units do not come with their own RAM and can only be obtained from the ongoing 10 Magic Stone Super Gadfest. The full lineup of the machine includes outdated Pantheons and GFEs, so it's not the most enticing machine to roll in if you already own most of those other units. The pull rate for the Idolm aster units is 14.5%, and with the cost of 10 Magic Stones per pull, getting them will not be easy or cheap. And are these units even worth chasing? I'd say probably not, especially if again, you already own multiple copies of the non-Idolm aster units. 3 Idolm aster units are exchangeable, but these trades are also very pricey. The remaining 5 units can each be purchased for $30, and while some of these have interesting forms, I think that for most people, these are questionable buys. Before investing too much in the Super Gadfest, I'd really recommend that you check the lineup because again, a lot of the units in the machine might not be worth the stones. Hopefully this video helps you decide whether rolling in the Super Gadfest is worth it, and if it does, please remember to like and subscribe. The good news about Pantheons being in the lineup is that you can use some of these to exchange for the A-star Idolm aster units. The bad news, however, is that you will need 20 units to make each trade. HappyHappyTwin is one of those 3 units, and they are a light damage dealing cleric. They haven't seen much use in JP. That does tend to be the case for damage dealing clerics, since you tend to want more utility on your clerics in the form of more heal OE and L awakenings, or for them to have a bulk buffing effect such as a large HP buff or a big shield. Light has good options out there, like Valentine Alina and Ordeal Cerclea. So this duo doesn't seem like the best option for me, at least when it comes to endgame teams. This duo's active skill might restrict you a bit much with their second stage board strength. Depending on the team, the 5x4 board could make it a bit difficult to activate certain leader skills. As an example, without other countermeasures to override the board strength, a Fern team would not be able to match that many light combos on such a small board. But on the other hand, Reinhardt wouldn't really mind the 5x4 board since matching a row will be even easier. But again, since light teams have plenty of options out there, especially with the recent addition of Serie, I wouldn't really stress that much about this Idolm aster duo, as they also don't really do a good job as a damage dealer in dungeons with punishing supergravity effects. This duo's light equip is one of the few ones that can generate a hard shape and thus could be useful in certain ranking dungeons. Bat Island Archangel's equip can work as a replacement since it does give you the same board, but maybe the cleric effect from HappyHappyTwin's equip will be needed in some dungeons. A recent ranking in JP that used both of these equips had a skill cap restriction, so even if you have multiple copies of Archangels, HappyHappyTwin's equip will be very hard to substitute in that ranking dungeon where you are limited to 5 active skill activations. The second equip could also maybe be of use in some rankings where you would like to destroy a shield and delay an enemy so that you can farm style points. I don't recall this equip being used in JP lately, but that could be the case in the future. As things stand, I have only seen one use case for this duo, so at the end of the day, this wouldn't be an exchange priority unless you really care about that one ranking that we might get once Pad Academy reruns. Dark Illuminate is another exchangeable unit that makes up a 3-unit Origin system. On top of the Origin, you will also get a looping damage absorption void, an HP buff, and a Capric effect for Dark and Fire units. The duo will also fix your board every other turn to 6x5, but half the time you'll still be at risk of not being able to heal. If an enemy gives you a 5x4 board while this unit is on its first active skill, then you won't be able to generate any heal orbs, as this duo's Origin will first generate 10 fire and 10 dark orbs, meaning that you'll have no space to generate heals. But maybe this will not be much of a deal breaker if you stack enough bulk or if you somehow time this duo's active skill. Timing skills with this unit is a little bit difficult because if you're running them as leaders, you will have to match a BDP every single turn to reduce damage. And since this BDP match will also boost your damage, stalling is not really an option. This unit does have a decent leader skill, but like always, 3-unit systems tend to be very inflexible as you will have to fit in specific units that condense certain effects into their active skills. So if you don't have all of the other typical subs for a Dark Illuminate team, then I would be skeptical about chasing or getting multiple Dark Illuminates. If you have an itch to play Dark BDP teams, then maybe save up for the possible Gintama rerun that will introduce a top tier leader of this archetype. this duo's first equip is solid for upcoming Dark BDP units from that collab, but I don't think this is irreplaceable. The second equip does make me think of ranking dungeons, but it probably generates too many heals. It does make enough so that you can match 3 rows of heals in a normal 6x5 board, but the placement of the non-heals will require a lot of movement to achieve that. The units that give you heart-shaped boards, like HappyHappyTwin's equip, are much easier to work with. So if you mainly care for ranking dungeons, then I feel like the previous unit may be of higher priority. New Generations is the last exchangeable unit that grants you a badge when you obtain them. There is no Idolm aster badge though. This unit will instead grant you the 3 attribute badge. Like other awakening badges, like Mistlark's, the HP and recovery gains are not tied to collab or event units, and will grant you certain effects, like bonus combos or attack multipliers, once you activate their respective awakening. So for the 3 attribute badge, I don't really think that is all that strong, and apart from this unit's team and Imperial Dramons, I don't think that there are many teams out there that actually care for this badge. That being said, this right now is your only chance to obtain this badge, as Idolm aster has not had a rerun in JP, so we don't really know if this exchange will come back sometime soon. If you're a collector or hope that a strong tricolor team will come along very soon, then definitely look into the exchange. Putting the badge aside, this trio and their team feels like a weaker, non-transforming version of Imperial Dramons. Both leaders have similar playstyles and make up an origin system, and on the upside, getting 1 or maybe 2 if you want to self-pair New Generations will definitely be easier than buying or rolling 2 or 3 copies of that Digimon BGM. Plus with this leader, you will not need to stack up a lot of skill boosts since most of their common subs either do not transform nor have long cooldown Evo active skills. The reason why I think this team is a weaker version than Imperial Dramons is that their damage output is lower than Imperial Dramons, and this trio's active skill doesn't deal with another important mechanic, in the way that Imperial Dramon deals with attribute absorption shields. Sure, New Generation's first stage active skill can deal with Awoken Vines, but it'll be extremely hard to time it considering that you will most likely be using them every single turn so that you can activate their leader skill. The rest of the secondary effects on the other stages are not that valuable apart from maybe the recovery and attack buffs, but even then, those will only last for 1 turn. Considering that Digimon also happened over 4 months ago, I would expect more from a unit such as this. The investment needed to complete a system and to roll or buy some of the other common team subs is pretty high, and I wouldn't recommend it. You could probably get a stronger team from other collabs by spending the same or even less. When it comes to this trio's equips, I feel like they're also not that strong. All of them could definitely have uses. The first one in a multi-attribute team, the second one in a light team or just as a skill boost and OE stick, and the last one for a possible ranking dungeon. I think you can replace all 3 across your other units' equips. That doesn't really apply for the water one since no other equip out there has a similar active skill that might not be that bad in a ranking dungeon. Though the random ore placement might not make it an ideal choice, especially if you want to maximize your clear time. The only reason why I would exchange for this unit would be to obtain the 3 attribute badge, and I would only do so by mostly using Pantheons. Again, I don't think that the badge itself will be all that useful in the near future, but this is the only way to obtain it as far as we know. And if you can't get the badge, I wouldn't lose sleep over it because when and if this badge is ever relevant, Gung-Ho will probably rerun Idolm aster or provide some other way to obtain it. Karen is a double absorption voider on a pretty decent cooldown that is also able to counter Awoken Vines. In a New Generations team, relying on the Idolm aster trio to clear Awoken Vines is not a realistic option, so you could rely on base Karen as your pseudo-cleric. Though with Karen, you might be required to stall a little bit on certain floors if you expect to encounter an Awoken Vine right after an absorption. The combos that the base generates still feel like a waste of time, but these might come in handy to deal with combo-related shields. Her Evo is one of just a few that give you a large shield on a Fortune cooldown. However, to balance this, she also comes with a debuff to her adjacent allies. At least that one is only for 1 turn, and her self-attack and cap break buffs will hopefully make up for the lost damage from those adjacent allies, especially if you can match across. One possible issue with the Evo's active skill is that it doesn't deal with another important mechanic like Awoken Vine, so on some teams, you might rather run someone like Ferris or Stark, as those can also serve as pseudo-clerics. Karen's second equip is really great. The awakenings will all drastically increase the utility on the unit you equip it to, as it will be able to clear unmatchables with the unmatchable recovery latent, reduce sticky blinds, free up some latent slots thanks to the SDR awakening, and make it easier to ensure that parts drop. But the most notable part is that with the awakenings, the active skill will give you a total of 6 effective skill boosts and will also give a 30 billion cap break to the unit to the right for 13 turns. This is a little similar to Chibi Oden's equip. Various endgame and farming builds can definitely benefit from this. This unit and Chibi Oden are both BGM units, and maybe if you purchase the Chibi one, then you might be less inclined to get Karen if you don't see yourself using the base. Mio is a damage-dealing piercer that could fit in a Reinhardt team. Like Valentine Athena or Shukamon, Mio also gives you an out to full heal boards. However, it'll be time-consuming to fish out 6 light orbs from this unit's roulette since it's not a special one like Shukamon's. Also, Mio's cap break and roulette do not loop, but maybe that's a price worth paying if you value her low cooldown shield break effect, as those are usually rare in the typical Reinhardt setups. Mio's Evo is better suited to work in new generation's teams, as those are usually composed of balanced units and also need a cap breaker. Her enhanced Skyfall loop can also let you not worry about stacking OEs through equips and thus have a bit more freedom when it comes to team building. But like always, this effect could always get overridden or voided by enemies. Evo Mio also triples your HP for 1 turn, but it might be a little bit tricky to properly use this effect as you might need the cap break effect to actually progress through a dungeon. Both of Mio's equip look as if they can be decent on light teams like Reinhardt's, but since neither banishes or is attacker type, a lot of the common subs for that leader will not be able to activate their Resonance or Self-Reliance awakenings. There are units out there like Shukamon who could use either equip, but due to the unimpressive active skill on this unit's equips, neither of them would be my first choice. So for a ranking dungeon, Mio's second CD could prove to be useful since it comes with a fixed board. The resulting board would let you activate a light draw, light break, taco, and bind clear awakenings just by swiping the resulting board. So not a bad option if a ranking dungeon boosts the style points for those awakening. Also, on a 7x6 board, the equip will change the 2 central rows to heal orbs, so maybe this equip will also be useful in dungeons where Super Fua activation is the way to go. Ranking dungeons with large hits that require big shields, like the one given by this equip, are not really a thing at the moment, so unfortunately, you will get a wasted animation. Those end shields are somewhat common nowadays in some ranking dungeons. This equip has a lot of potential. Kaede is also a looping cap breaker for balance type units, but unlike Evo Mio, this unit also gives a looping HP buff. 1.5x is not enough to tank large hits, but in conjunction with this HP buff, you could use a slightly smaller shield like Ordeal Circlius. As opposed to Evo Mio, Kaede goes all out on utility and can serve as a recovery stick and help recover assist with her 6 L awakenings. Plus, her active skill also voids attribute absorption shields on a 50% uptime, so having her in a team can reduce the stress on double absorption voider units, such as Karen. However, it might be hard to fit in this unit in a team since most of the time you rely on a cleric that already carries enough heal OEs or L awakenings, and Kaede here would just be taking up a slot that could be devoted to a damage dealer. That mainly only matters in the latest endgame content where your team is expected to meet certain damage thresholds, so you don't really want to carry more than one unit that doesn't have any damage output. This unit's first equip has a decent active skill, but its awakenings hold it back. Kikoro is basically the only L unit that could use non-banishing L equips such as this one, but since it also has a wood sub-attribute awakening, you wouldn't really want this on that light L unit. Evo Kaede is a decent double absorption voider, but like always, wood PvP teams are not really that strong, even after all of the recent support from collabs like ReZero and Freren. Still, on paper, Evo Kaede is a good option for those PvP teams, especially because her looping roulette can be very handy if you need additional orb gen. You can either fish out heal orbs in a New Year Outbreak team, since that leader doesn't generate any heals, or you could use the roulette to have more matches on the board to overcome combo-related shields. Kaede's second equip is basically the wood version of New Generation's water equip, and this one could also maybe be of use in a ranking dungeon. Though like I mentioned with that other equip, the random orb placement might not make it an ideal choice, and thus will probably not be in high demand. Uzuki is a great utility cleric that can help tank large hits that are now commonplace in in-game content. Her 4 L awakenings are also very useful to help recover assist, though I kinda wish that she had more heal OEs, as only 4 might not cut it in super altitude dungeons like El Cloud. The 3 extra recovery buff in the active skill also feels like overkill. I kinda wish that buff had been omitted and maybe then Uzuki's cooldown could have been lower by 1 turn, but honestly it doesn't really matter. Uzuki is still a great cleric for modern teams that match fire or light orbs. Her first equip offers decent utility, but since it doesn't vanish, not a lot of units will care for the El Awakening. It might not be that bad on Ferris since he could use more healing, the balanced typing for Rem and Ram teams, and the SDR Awakening to resist up to 4 skill delays while carrying the assist recovery latent. The 10 turns of auto heal and enhanced orb skyfall could be used in farming setups or in the latest dungeons where buff voids are not really a thing. Even though the 10 turns of auto heal will not get voided by enemies, the enhanced orb skyfall can still be overridden by enemies, so you might not get too much value out of that equip's effect. Evo Uzuki is a looping attribute absorption voider, though at the moment not that many teams have a need for a unit such as this. This Evo sees some use in Dark Illuminate teams, but Yukine's new red color, which we should be getting soon, might be a better absorption voider for that team, as that other unit's damage will not suffer from attribute disadvantages. If you have that Mystics unit and are going for the Dark Illuminate team, you could pass on Uzuki if you don't mind waiting a few more weeks. I guess that Evo Uzuki does have the advantage of having a hard L and a time change resist awakening, so for some setups, Uzuki might be the better choice. This Evo's double shield destruction is also nice, but like always, that effect might be hard to time due to the unit's 6-turn cooldown. Her second equip doesn't seem that useful. The Awakenings lock it into fire PvP teams, which aren't in a good place at the moment, and its active skill also seems very niche and replaceable. If you want a big cap break, you could use other equips, and even if you don't have other ones that also give a 70 billion cap break, equips that grant longer lasting cap breaks might be better in most cases, even if the cap break is a lower amount like Karen's second equip. Base Rin Shibuya is a looping 40% shield that cap breaks herself to 24 billion. Her only being attacker type means that she can avoid the smaller type cap breaks from someone like Evo Mio, Kaede, or Imperial Dramon, and thus increase your team's damage output. With her double shield destruction, 2 full resist, and damage awakenings, this unit will definitely bring a lot of value to any team that can have her. Rin's first equip is great for damage dealers and also provides a decent amount of utility. The haste and 5 turns of attribute void and pierce can all be very useful at the start of dungeons, though the cooldown might be a little bit too long, especially in teams with modern transforming units that tend to not have any skill boost awakenings. Evo Ren is a looping piercer that also cap breaks herself to 24 billion. Her team-wide targeted attack buff can be pretty handy in dungeons like El Cloud, where 2 different floors will give you very punishing attack debuffs. Her parts gravity can also obviously be very helpful when it comes to farming parts in the latest endgame dungeons. Reinhardt teams tend to not have subs with parts gravities, so Evo Rin could bring in more value than balancing Athena as your looping piercer as long as you change Rin to light attribute with Serie. However, any Reinhardt team running Evo Rin should have an answer to full heal boards, as you'll be missing Valiant and Athena's fixed row. Rin's second equip is one of a handful that has 2 Part Break awakenings, and is probably one of the better ones due to the skill boost and 7C awakenings. The active skill could have farming applications due to its gravity, though the change the world effect will be annoying since you'll have to wait 12 seconds anytime that you use it. As a reminder, your turn will end at the end of the change the world timer unless you hold an orb and don't drop it. I don't really think that fact matters with regards to this equip's active skill, but I just wanted to call attention to that as we don't get a lot of change the world actives and maybe some might find a little bit useful. Overall, I think that Rin is the bundled unit with the most use cases, and if you spend money in the game, she might be worth a look. Her base is a great looping shield, her Evo also a great looping piercer, and both forms deal a good chunk of damage. Not to mention that her equips are both really solid. Uzuki is a great cleric for newer dungeons that have a few scattered big hits, though the rest of her forms feel lackluster at the moment. The rest of the 7 stars have niche uses in their monster forms, but might be worth getting for some of their equips, with Karen's second equip being a prime example. All of the 7 stars are all BGM units and are therefore purchasable for $30, so you could snag them without rolling in this otherwise lackluster Super Gathfest. The 8-star Idolm aster units are all exchangeable for 20 fodder units, which is expensive, but thankfully some pantheons qualify as fodder. If you've been playing for a while now, you might have enough to make a trade or 2 rather painlessly. I would first look into exchanging for new generations, as this trio will grant you the 3 attribute badge. The badge is not interesting honestly, but for now, this is the only way to obtain it. Maybe it'll be used in some future team. But if you end up missing it, I honestly wouldn't lose any sleep over it. New generations can be used as a leader and makes up a 2-unit system, but I think that they're very underwhelming, especially if you have other meta leaders. Dark Illuminate is also somewhat viable as a leader, but Dark PvP teams will soon get more and better support from Mystics and Gintama units, so I don't really see much value in exchanging for 2 or 3 copies to make up a system, as this leader will soon have a lot of competition. HappyHappyTwin is the last exchangeable unit, and apart from their second equip that can be used for ranking dungeons, I see very little reason to exchange for it. Actually, most of the Idolm aster units have somewhat viable ranking equips, with some being better than others. The only equips that I've noticed have gotten some use in JP in ranking dungeons have been Mio's and HappyHappyTwins, so if you primarily care about ranking dungeons, maybe prioritize those 2 units first. Every Idolm aster unit is either exchangeable or purchasable, but before pulling the trigger on this otherwise lackluster Super Godfest, make sure to clear the Cinderella Girls special stage dungeon, as this will complete a quest that will give you a random Idolm aster unit. Maybe you'll get lucky and get the unit that you care for, but if you're unlucky or want to chase some of the Idolm aster units, make sure to double check the lineup in this machine to see if anything else catches your eye. At 10 magic stones per pull, you should use your own discretion, as the rates and the rest of the units in the lineup are not that great in my opinion, and your stones could be better spent elsewhere. Bad Academy should return soon, and its lineup, albeit crowded, has some very interesting units and equips. I don't think that people should go crazy on that seasonal, but in general, I think that a couple of rolls will not hurt most people. Mystics are set to come back, but that 5 magic stone machine is also crowded with outdated Pantheons and GFEs. I don't think that this rerun is all that exciting, especially if you already own a lot of the previously released Mystic units. And the same pretty much goes for the Star Twine Fairies rerun. When it comes to collabs, we might see Gintama and Conan come to NA. Both would be reruns, but are a little different this time around, as Gintama would be a revamp 10 Magic Stone RAM, and Conan would exclude the previously released units that are related to Yaiba. I think that most people should be more excited about Gintama, since that machine introduces a Dark PvP team that is considered to be on the same level as Reinhardt. Gintama will also introduce a new Gintoki with 2 very interesting Evos, but at the end of the day, we're not really sure if this and Conan will actually come to NA until we get an official announcement. So what are your plans? I was originally more excited about this Super Godfest because for some reason I thought that Nikke was going to be in the lineup. That GFE grants the attacker badge, which keeps showing up on certain Reinhardt builds that I would like to make. So I thought that this Super Godfest was going to have more value for me since I also wanted to get a couple of the Idolm aster units. Needless to say, I was pretty bummed when I found that Nikke was not going to be in the machine. So now I'll have to wait until the next Godfest. If you're in the same boat, she will probably show up in a 5 Magic Stone Godfest that NA will probably get around June. So if you're like me, you will have to wait about a month until the next chance where we can gamble for Nikke. Anyways, best of luck if you're rolling. Thank you guys for watching, and a special thank you goes out to Austin, Breastfeeding Obama, Daniel, Professor, and T Bunnyfish for supporting the channel. I really appreciate it. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.